So great to have your company once again for Moments That Matter. Back for the NBL26 season. Every Monday we break down everything that's happened across the league, the big talking points, the key moments in the game. We talk about the good stuff and sometimes the bad stuff as well. I'm Jack Heverin. My running mate Derek Rucker is back. D-Ruck, great to have you back again.
Well, the round one is off to a nice start. Some interesting performances, and let's get into it. All the moments that mattered.
Why don't we start with Melbourne United, because they are 2-0 to start the season. Two very different wins. They go to Tasmania in the season opener on Thursday night. They have to really grind one out. And then they beat New Zealand in what was one of the most one-sided contests we've seen in a while.
Well, coming out of the blitz, it was evident that Melbourne United had done an outstanding job in retooling their lineup. The big signing and the big man in the middle, Jesse Edwards, is the primary reason, Jack, that I felt and many others that they are a real championship threat and perhaps the favorite. And they displayed it with two very difficult victories. Well, the first victory was very difficult, but the way they came out in the first quarter and put pressure on New Zealand in this game was outstanding.
So double-double in the first game, 22-6 against New Zealand. Do you think that Jesse Edwards is maybe a little bit better than some people had predicted coming into the season?
I think so, and it's so rare that we get a big man of his age. He's only 25 years old, and he's still climbing in terms of his development. Usually those types of players are over in the Euro League or stay in the G League, so Melbourne United did a great job in acquiring his services, and now because they have him on their roster, he can change games big time, as we've seen already.
He feels like the perfect player for what Melbourne United need. Is that fair?
Well, he only took 10 shots in this game. He made 9 of 10 from the field. He provides an adequate level of rim protection, but I think that will continue to improve as he learns the competition. But the fact that he's very coachable, I was watching his interaction with the coaching staff and the bench, and in particular with Dean Vickerman. It seems like that relationship is right where it should be for this guy to have a real impact consistently over the course of the season.
Milton Doyle settled in beautifully. He was the man on Thursday night against the Tasmania Jack Jumpers. Took the game away from the JJs in the fourth quarter. It almost feels like there's no such thing as perfect in professional sport, but Melbourne's opening round, to me, doesn't seem far off it.
And you mentioned Milton Doyle, and I just want to touch on him for a second, because in game one, he kind of displayed what we've seen over the past 2 seasons. Low efficiency, but big-time shot making and making all the plays when it matters. He's been an analytics nightmare for those of us who follow the stats and the advanced metrics closely. But in the game against New Zealand, where he was able to find a nice rhythm, he played much more efficiently, and I think that is the Milton Doyle that we may see for the majority of this season.
Just on Melbourne's opponent from the Sunday game, the New Zealand Breakers. They have had an off-season where everything was about getting back to the future and getting the culture and the fabric back into this New Zealand organisation after what was a disaster at the back end of last season. They lose at home on Friday night. They get absolutely smacked on Sunday against Melbourne, and Parker Jackson-Cartwright looks to be in serious doubt for the future with a rib issue. We talk about it being the perfect weekend for Melbourne. It feels like a disaster weekend for the Breakers.
Well, it was almost as if that Brisbane game at home, their home opener, was going to be the trigger for how this round went for them. And to go down and lose that game at home, I think probably maybe hurt their spirit a little bit coming into this one. Parker Jackson-Cartwright, you could see early on that he wasn't himself. No Sam Menenga with the concussion protocol. And Rob Baker, obviously just trying to feel his way into this Breakers lineup. It's a tough start to the season for the Breakers. However, you know, we know what they're capable of doing. They've just got to get everyone healthy. That's the top priority, and I think Andrew Gay said it well. They need to not worry about all the scheme and all that stuff. They just got to get healthy and learn to play with better effort on the defensive end.
So the Tasmania Jack Jumpers went down in a close one on Thursday night, and we did think them going to Perth on Saturday night, playing a fresh Wildcats, was going to be a really tough assignment for them, and you could almost forgive them for going 0-2. That is one hell of a win on Saturday night.
It was, and after losing a tough game Thursday night to open the season against Melbourne United, I didn't think they would beat Perth in Perth. Perth with this esteemed lineup, everyone predicting them as being a top 2 team, a team that's going to appear in the championship series further down the road. For Tasmania to go in there and absolutely stranglehold Perth on the defensive end. Perth could not score. I believe they got 72 points in that game, which is crazy considering the amount of talent in that Perth roster. You know, Scott Roth is a master at pulling off these types of victories, and he's done it again.
Must have scouted Perth on the plane on the way over. Bryce Hamilton was dominant on Saturday night, was very good on Thursday night in the season opener. If you could redo your top 15 right now, just off the one round, where would you have Bryce Hamilton?
I definitely have him in the top 7 because the guy was outstanding. And the only reason I weighed him down was the fact that he hadn't played in the league, and he's still a young pro. But after 2 games already where he's averaged, you know, he's right about the 25 per game mark and showing no signs of being able to be defended effectively by anyone in this competition, this guy's a real stud. Jack, I'm going to say also, had he not sustained that cramp in the game against Melbourne United down in Hobart, I think Tasmania are 2-0.
Really?
I think they were going to win that game because Melbourne United didn't have anyone that can contain Hamilton, and Johnson, David Johnson, was cooking in that game also.
Yeah, he can really shoot the basketball, David Johnson. He's one to watch. The Perth Wildcats at home, it's going to take a little while. I mean, their roster came together late. Joe Lawala-Shule Jr. was a late signing. Mason Jones a really late signing. But are you concerned with the way that it all came together Saturday night, or perhaps that it didn't come together for them?
Not overly concerned. Look, Mason Jones got off the plane and went to work in the preseason series against the Japanese teams, and he played in game 2, and he was outstanding. So I think that probably really elevated our expectations and the Red Army, their hopes of what he was going to be able to do. But it does take time. They've got a lot of new pieces that they've got to find, and they've got to all gel as a unit. They've got to figure out what works on the offensive end. The good sign for the Perth Wildcats is that they were outstanding on the defensive end in limiting, you know, Tasmania to only 75 points despite losing. And this is an area where they were terrible last season. So there was some hope there.
So what does that conversation look like for John Rillie during the week when they're trying to work out, I mean, it's the old saying, there's only one ball out there, and they're trying to work out who's taking the shots in at the appropriate times? How do you work this all out?
Well, I think John Rillie's done a good job of that over the past couple of seasons, but it's trying to find who your focal point is. And I think the focal point right now should be Christian Doolittle. I think he's a guy that's the most solid right now. Dylan Windler was down. He only had 3 points the other night. He was passive, yeah, and that was really surprising because he looked good in the preseason. But Perth are going to be fine, although they're going to be challenged. They've got to go play this New Zealand team in New Zealand. So, you know, there's just no easy games, and if you don't come ready, you'll get popped.
Well, there was one easy game from round 1, and that was the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix against the Cairns Taipans. We'll get to the Phoenix in a moment. Understand they have no Sam Wardenberg at the moment, Cairns, and they are waiting on their new point guard to arrive as well. But for all the off-season hype, Derek, and the signing of Jack McVeigh and the renewed hope with this organisation, that was a really, really below standard round 1 game.
It all looked really hard for them, Jack. And the Taipans, it didn't look like they got free. It didn't look like they ever got limber, to use, you know, a metaphor. I just didn't feel like they were up and down and free-flowing. It just looked clunky on the offensive end. Now, as you say, we're going to get to the Phoenix because the Phoenix did a great job with their defensive strategy and intensity and making things really difficult for the Taipans. But I thought Schofield was down. I thought the point guard play was really poor. They had trouble getting into their offenses, and as a result, Jack McVeigh, although he had 18 points or so, it wasn't a good 18, and he really never got himself going because his game is so dependent on getting into offense.
So they like to get up and down. We know that about Adam Ford coach teams, but can that go too far the other way? Can you almost focus too much on that end of the floor and not enough on that end of the floor?
Yeah, and the challenge for the Taipans is going to be road performances. If you're just going to come out on the road and get blasted like that, it puts a lot of pressure on your home games, and it means that each home game becomes imperative in terms of whether or not you win it. At some point, they're going to have to find a better balance, and maybe they have to play almost 2 styles of basketball, a quicker, more up-tempo, high-energy way at home and a more shrewd style of basketball when they perform on the road.
Credit goes to the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix, though, as we said, Derek. They put points on the board. They had 6 players in double figures. Now, this is a team that has had some disruption in the off-season. They've already said goodbye to an import in Vrenz Blyenberg. If anyone, I guess, could be forgiven for having a bit of a mulligan in round one, it was the Phoenix, but they were great.
Yeah, well, Jack, they have the advantage of having a really good Australian nucleus. I've mentioned this before, but with Sobey, Foxwell, Glover, Hunter, these are guys who are veterans. Well, 3 of them are veterans in the league, and Foxwell is up and coming, but he seems to feel like he's the best player on the floor, so you really look at him like he's more experienced than what his NBL game tally will actually tell you. So when you have that Australian nucleus, that gives you a good floor to start from. The floor is elevated when you have a coach like Josh King, who is so good in getting his team defensively ready. They ate Cairns up on the defensive end. They made it very difficult to advance a basketball, and then they were able to get the offense clicking. Glover was outstanding.
They're going to be hard to score against, Eric. I feel like for all teams, now that Josh King's had the best part of, not a full season, but close to, to understand the league and to understand his style of coaching, it feels like if you want to beat the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix, you better come with the right attitude.
You do. You've got to be able to match their intensity, but also your scheme must be really good to deal with their defense. You have to prioritize where you want the basketball to go on the offensive end. How are you going to generate points against Southeast Melbourne? And I guess, Jack, this is just a great tease for the throwdown coming Thursday night.
Yeah, can't wait for that one. We shouldn't finish off the first episode without talking about the Brisbane Bullets, who in their first game on Friday went to New Zealand, had a win. The ball moved. They managed to get everyone looks. Casey Prather was fantastic. It's a tick for the Bullets first up.
Prather was great. Tyrell Harrison had 24 points and 15 rebounds. Javon Freeman-Liberty, outstanding. And Jalen Adams played a very good role. He had 5 steals, but I thought he did a good job of getting the ball in the paint, getting the ball to those guys I mentioned before. And I just thought Sam McDaniel looked strong as well. That starting 5 for Brisbane is not to be overlooked. In fact, they scored 92 points, which is one of the highest tallies we've seen from a starting 5 in a number of years.
So don't forget, of course, we had Sydney and Adelaide taking part in the PGT tournament this weekend. So we get our first look at both of them next weekend. And the Illawarra Hawks have been overplaying in the ICC as well. So we'll see them in round 2. So it's a shorter version of moments that matter for round 1, which means we get to our thumbs up and thumbs down. Let's go with the good stuff first.
Thumbs up, I'm going to go with Tyrell Harrison, 24 points and 15 rebounds, and I thought that was a significant performance by Tyrell to start off the season. It got the Bullets a victory, and it got him off to a good start. He'd missed most of the preseason, Jack, and I thought that was a strong showing.
Well, I don't know how many times we'll both have the Brisbane Bullets as thumbs up this season.
Maybe.
I'm giving my thumbs up to Javon Freeman-Liberty.
JFL.
I keep getting that name wrong. Javon Freeman-Liberty. He might have, in the first round of the season, had the dunk of the year and the block of the year. This guy's a highlight reel.
He's a live wire body, and that dunk was outstanding. And, you know, the Bullets, if they can keep those guys healthy, they're a real chance, despite the rather unorthodox coaching that was going on. It looks like Stu Lash has almost ceded a lot of the in-game coaching to his assistants, and in particular, Greg Vanderjack.
Do you like that?
If it works.
It's different, isn't it?
It is very different, and the number of messages and comments I got about that style, but, you know, it's almost as if Stu Lash is like the manager at Hungry Jack's and just overseeing everything and making sure the burgers keep flipping and the fries keep frying.
Vandy was on the fryer, was he? Thumbs down?
Thumbs down. I'm going to give it to the Breakers. I just didn't like their energy. Like, I don't mind if you lose basketball games, but you got to play with a vigor, with an excitement, with an enthusiasm and a passion. And Coach Kopp has a few days now to try and get this team energized, got to get them healthy. But I don't care what your situation is. If you're sick, if you're feeling nervous, whatever, give maximum effort.
My thumbs down, and it's unavoidable, is unfortunately Sam Wardenberg's injury. In no way is this an excuse for the performance that Cairns put out there on Saturday, none whatsoever. But he was an early signing. He's a big piece for the Taipans, and for him to not be there for somewhere between 8 to 10 weeks with an ankle injury, I feel really sorry for the Taipans, and I really feel for Sam because it's going to be a disrupted season.
Yeah, and he's such an outstanding player, but seemingly always sustaining these injuries that kind of curtail his development. But look, now's an opportunity for guys like Kyron Galloway to step up and show what they're worth as quality NBL players. Can you perform and help your team win basketball games?
So that is us done and dusted for round one here in the NBL. It's been great to have your company on Moments That Matter. We will be back every single Monday to break down everything as it all happens. Don't forget, you can stay up to date all week long at nbl.com.au and check out the NBL on social media as well. Derek, I'll catch you next week.
Next week, Jack.
We will be in studio. We'll see you then.